Hi, everybody. Welcome to another live stream episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Wristwatch check, wearing my recently acquired JLC Polaris Chrono. I really, really like this watch. And one of the things I've discovered, maybe I should have read the manual, but who reads a watch manual? It has a very, very nice micro adjust here. There's a link very similar to the Rolex, single link fold on both sides. So you actually get a decent micro adjust with a double deployant bracelet, which is very rare. But then again, this is a JLC Polaris Chrono, which is swinging in the big leagues. Hey, Warren, how's it going, my friend? Johnny Carter, how's it going? I'm really glad you enjoy my show. And I enjoy your support because I wouldn't exist without you, the audience. Without you, I am nothing. So I am very, very grateful for the time and effort you put in to watch my show, whether you watch it live or recorded. I give my a tip of the hat to you. So, hey, Oscar, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk about the tariffs and watches and European watches and Swiss watches. But before I start, this is only going to be talking about the tariffs. We're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about policy. We're not going to talk about ideology. All we're going to talk about is the tariffs that are here and that we have to address and that the industry has to address and how it may impact us as watch collectors. But we're just going to talk about the tariffs and watches. And then, of course, as usual, we'll talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. And if you're watching this recorded and you want to participate, send me a question and I'll answer it in the following show. So, Eric, hey, Eric, Johnny, the tariff are rough from Swiss and China. Well, I mean, the tariffs, the 39% tariff on Switzerland, I believe, is the highest tariff given to any of the industrial trading partners of the United States, if I am not mistaken. If I am, I know someone will correct me. But that's a significant amount of money, and it's caused a lot of moving and shaking in the watch industry. In fact, quite a few companies before the August deadline. I mean, now we're in mid-August and the tariffs have hit, but right up before the deadline, a lot of companies shipped months and months of inventory. Like, for example, Breitling, I believe, even said specifically that they've got like 3 to 4 months of inventory on hand, and they're hoping to weather this because whether I mean, like I said, I'm not going to talk about the policy or the politics, but whether it just ends or gets negotiated away or whatever, there are a lot of hopes that this is not a long-term tariff. Now, if it is a long-term tariff, then we have a totally different set of equations involved because right now we've got a lot of in-house stock, a lot of inventory has been built up. A lot of companies are planning for short-term unease, and with luck, this too shall pass, as they say, and we won't have to worry about it anymore. But count on some rough times if you're a Swiss watch person. Now, there are tariffs also on the Germans and other European watches, French and the like, but they're less. So, in fact, Nomos, if I'm not mistaken, Nomos announced that they are going to eat their tariff costs. But then again, Glashütte, they can give up a little bit of margin to help them gain market share because the nice thing is these are really nice watches, and half the reason that they don't get the appreciation they deserve is because there are very popular Swiss alternatives. But now is a great opportunity for places like Glashütte and Paris. Frankly, the French are trying very hard to grow back into the watch business. And I interviewed one of the French companies making mainstream watches at the Ourforia Fair, and you should check that out. But, when you start thinking about alternatives to Swiss watches in the marketplace, now is a great time for the other European brands to really come forward, because there are people who are going to still want a European watch or something a little different and don't want to drop that kind of money on the Swiss tariff raised price watches. So, yeah, now's a good time for French watches and British watches and American watches. If I were um, Shinola, for example, I would really be working on, let's do a China and Venus, buy a license on a mainstream good Swiss, uh, or actually Solita started by making off patent, movements that have run out of patent, and Shinola can equally do the same. I mean, obviously, it takes infrastructure and it takes trained people and it takes all of those kinds of things, but there are people who know how to make watches that live in the United States. There are companies that can do machining and the like, and depending on how long the tariffs go, right? Because if it's a short-term thing, then any heavy duty industrial investment um, will not be cost effective if it's a short term thing. If it's a long term thing, then it would behoove a company like a Shinola to maybe do some more in-house vertical, as they say in the business world, vertical manufacturing, and then they could benefit from this situation, depending on, again, how long this situation goes. But um, this is also a great time when you think about the vintage market. A lot of vintage pieces, and there was already a little bit of a trend going to 36 watches. A lot of people are starting to think about smaller watches, but back in the day, 36 was actually a little large compared to the mainstream. But now it appears that the sweet spot for watches is between 36 and 42. Anything over 42 is considered a little too big, and anything under 36 is considered a little too little. But there's a lot of really great um, opportunity in the vintage space, and I think you're gonna see a lot of that too. But then again, vintage prices will go up a little bit too, or maybe not, 'cause the problem is that the tariffs aren't existing in a vacuum. There are other economic factors involved, and if it's a soft market, it's a soft market, whether it's watches or cars or whatever, or, if it's a gray market, because that's the other side of the coin. Those people who used to, sell gray and black market watches, they're gonna sell more of them. You're gonna see more smuggling. People who used to sell fake watches, they'll start selling hot, real watches. The supply chain, as I point out, for fake watches is not a legitimate supply chain. So all kinds of things can go through that supply chain, and we'll start seeing hot watches from everywhere, not just from Europe. Because with the import issues, I wouldn't want to smuggle hot Swiss watches into the United States, but I could easily see a rash of watch thefts throughout the United States to feed a gray, and well, actually, it wouldn't be gray if it was stolen merchandise, to feed a black market in Swiss watches. I mean, there's already a black market in Swiss watches. So to see that expand, I don't think is a great leap of imagination. Um, to me, tariffs would do increase prices, but at some point it would stabilize and allow people to make money, make more money. Well, it would be if that money went to profit, but that money's not going to profit. um, that those tariffs are just an additional cost. So it would be as if steel prices went up, or if artificial sapphire prices went up. Uh, they wouldn't necessarily make. I mean, they would they may get healthy again as a business, but they wouldn't necessarily make more money because of the increased materials cost. In the case of tariffs, it's an intangible cost, but it is a cost that is added to the watch. So um, the market will, of course, compensate eventually. Um, but with a 39, I mean, 39% is that's almost half. Uh, That's a 40% increase with no change in product, no change in materials, no change in workmanship, nothing. So, I mean, that's a big thing. It really is a heavy duty thing. And the companies may recover from that, but with a 40% intangible attached to it, they would have to cut costs in other areas. And the Swiss market, the Swiss mechanical watch industry rescued itself from the quartz wars by going upmarket. And at the highest ends, there is room to eat some of it, but 40% is greater than the profit margins of a lot of the companies involved in the equation. I mean, 30% is a high margin, and 49 is almost twice that, 20% over. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out for the marketplace, because I'm just a watch collector guessing myself. Everything I say here could be completely wrong. I'm just going by logical assumptions. Black market's going to go up. We see the investment. Audemars Piguet just bought a Swiss infrastructure company, um, watch infrastructure, finishings, machinings, and stuff. Everyone's trying to reduce their costs or increase their revenue. I mean, increase their inventories to weather this situation out. Although what AP is doing is a smarter thing because it's reducing their costs, directly addressing what Oscar brought up about costs and recovering from those costs. Um, Integrating your manufacturing will reduce your costs without reducing your quality. And that would be a good thing for the industry. On a negative side, all of us that wanted to see Swatch spin off some of their companies like Longines, that's not going to happen anymore, because you need a large organization to integrate costs and integrate materials and integrate management to save money on a large scale. And so, in the face of the tariffs, we're not going to see any spin-offs. Not that his Swatch was ever going to spin anybody off, but we all had fantasies. But it's not going to happen now. You know, any company we may see more consolidation if these tariffs continue. We may see more consolidation within the Swiss industry as Swiss companies band together to integrate and save costs on manufacturing and distribution and cut out middle management. Which saves money as well. That's one of the benefits of integration is you can optimize your supply chain, optimize your management, and save money in that fashion. But those are all things that aren't going to change the prices to us in a lot of ways. What it'll do is it'll increase their ability to absorb those costs, and maybe they'll give up some of that cost side that they ate up front and make money closer to their original profit margins, but not they'll never exceed the profit margins they had before the tariffs. That's until they change. The Vince, hey the Vince, and Johnny Smack Daddy, hey Johnny. The tariff will hit hard the mechanical watch industry, yes, which is already getting squeezed by smartwatches. Yes, I've said that a lot lately. Apple won the quartz wars, and it never hurts to have some nice quartz pieces like the oyster quartz or the bull of a lunar pilot, for example. Those are legitimately cool collectible quartz pieces to own. Quartz is just a quartz time only watch is just as antiquated as a mechanical three-hander. So, yeah, like I said, it's good. You're going to see some interesting business moves being made to compensate for this issue. The Vince, I love to get used watches on eBay. Now the import taxes are over $1,000 or more. Well, depends on the price of the used watch. That's when I was saying vintage and all, I meant vintage pieces that are already inside of the United States. If they're vintage pieces outside of the United States, then you have the same issue. But a lot of the Manhattan watch dealers who have humongous inventories, they'll be able to dump some of that. I would not dump, but they'll be able to move some of that product because there'll be people who are interested in that old Omega Speedmaster flyback, that they may not have bought because it looks more like an X33 as far as case and shape and all, and maybe even harks a little bit back to the old Speed Sonic, the flyback, but it is an Omega Speedmaster, and it may not be a watch that was very hot but it is a watch that is always been collectible, that has always been collectible, and so I think we're gonna see more of the vintage market grow in especially the areas of, on brand, off product, used watches. Like, you're gonna see a lot of Da Vinci's move now and Cellini's move now, in my humble opinion. Some stuff that was sitting on the shelves in the United States that wasn't picking up a lot of traction is gonna start getting more attractive to the marketplace because, that Cellini is still a Rolex, and to the average person, you know, 9 times out of 10, the average person didn't get presented that Cellini because they weren't even thinking about getting that Cellini. But now, as the store's inventories start going down, you're going to see the DeVilles and the Cellinis start showing up in the shop windows, in my humble opinion. Um, Gian, hey everybody. I mean, hey Gian. Gian said, "Hey everybody." Oscar agrees with Johnny. The tariffs, right? Damon, hey Damon. In the short term, new watch prices rise and the pre-owned market thrives. Well, that's I think we are. I think the pre-owned market's gonna do some robust business. Check out uh, and not just the everybody from Watchfinder to Delray watches to Chrono 24. All of the gray market vendors that are that have inventory inside of the United States, they're gonna do gangbusters. Because the market for luxury products, because don't forget, watches are two tier in one sense. They're premium product that are expensive but not luxury, and then there's luxury product that is very expensive and luxury. So I think the people who are going to get beat up the most are the poor people like Oris and Mito, and Certina, the mainstream Swiss pieces that were retailing for 1,000, 1,500, 1,800. Those are going to be significantly more expensive. I'm drinking gin out of a skull decanter as a memento mori, reminder of our mortality. Um, Never hurts to remind oneself now and again. But then again, some people say I don't use it as a reminder of my mortality. But there are people who say they wear their watches as a reminder of time passing in all senses, as it were. But hopefully, time will pass on this too. This too, hopefully, will also pass. But we're gonna see shenanigans increase because the black market has always been there, and it's just gonna get bigger, frankly, until because the people are still gonna want nice things, and nobody's negotiated away their desire for nice things, so there'll always be a market for nice things. So it's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting. Um, Julius Caesar, hey Julius, if I didn't say hi, I'll say hi again. It's a 29% increase since current tariff is 10. Well, it's a 39 since the current is 10 because it would be 39 plus 10 to be 49. So it's a 39. I'm Yeah, to be because it's a 49% tax. Or is it a 39% tariff? Yeah, 49% tariff. So yeah, it's did I say 39 earlier? I guess. But even if it is, that's a 29% uptick. See, I'll look it up later. Someone will tell me what the exact tariff is, but I believe it is 49, which means it's a 39% increase over the current tariff. Now, like I said, Germany, for example, they are going to be not in good shape, but they can afford to eat it. Like Nomos announced that they're going to eat their tariff, increases because 10% is a lot easier to swallow. You um, a lot easier to swallow. Pyromaniac shrub. Johnny, funny to see the gray market Swiss watches come to equal price as old prices of ordinary Swiss before tariff. Yeah, well, like I said, it's gonna get interesting with the on brand off model. Like you, you're gonna see people looking at the Nicholas Rusek nicer if there's some inventory in the United States because this was selling for about 5 to 6K used, right? And it retails for 9 and change. So you're gonna see these start, these kind of off to the side Swiss pieces start creeping up. The Globe Master, underappreciated piece. They're almost certainly some vault warriors in Omega that a lot of people didn't really think about or look at, but now they're gonna start looking. They're gonna go, hey, wow, because even if you think about it, this $800 Hamilton is now gonna be over $1,000. Hamilton khaki field officer, right? Nice watch. I mean, it's a gorgeous watch. It's a great daily wear, really beautiful piece, right? But this isn't a luxury watch. This is a premium watch, right? And so the increase in cost on this piece will not be well received by the marketplace, to not too fine a point on it. You know? Um, Superfly Micros. Hey, hey, why are Christopher Ward charging the entire 39 at checkout just because the most of the watch is Swiss, but not based out of Swiss? Well, because it does say Swiss made, and that means it is a registered, not registered, but it is a Swiss product. They claim to be a Swiss product. The company is headquartered in Britain, but those watches are still a product out of Switzerland. That would be like uh, owning a company that has, say, bananas, and your offices are in Long Island, but you're shipping bananas into the United States across the border. They're still going to inspect the bananas. You can't just simply say and tariff them. You can't just simply say those bananas belong to Rhode Island, but they came from Costa Rica or wherever they came from. And that it's the origin of the product that is being, because, like, look at Apple or any of the multinationals. They've got product that comes in from outside of the country, and those products are going to be tariffed. It's a complicated thing. I mean, not complicated. It's complicated in the sense that, if you're a multinational operating in different zones, you got to think about what product is coming from what zone and what the tariff is. I mean, it would be a nightmare for a procurement official to think about, okay, I've got this tariff here in this country, and this tariff here in this country, and this tariff here in this country, and they might have been different tariffs, and there almost certainly had been different tariffs depending on the product. My microcontrollers are coming from this company, and my plastic is coming from this company, and the foam gaskets are coming from this company, and the steel in the battery clips and the antennas are coming from this country. There are very few vertically organized corporations in any industry. I mean, for example, Rolex and Seiko are two of the vertically integrated companies in the watch industry, but not many are, and that's issue's going to happen around the world with everybody. There are going to be companies that are, just think of how many, for example, French companies that manufacture out of Switzerland. And it gets more complicated if it's, say, for example, a German watch with a Swiss movement, or a American watch with a Swiss movement, for that matter. Those movements coming in have to pay the tariffs on the movements. Now, that'll be a lower price than the tariffs on a finished watch. But again, there are going to be a lot of business uh, planning and organization and reorganization, like Audemars Piguet buying that Swiss infrastructure company. Some companies are making moves that are good for the short term and are good for the long term. Like this AP move, yes, it's in response to the tariffs, but if the tariffs do end soon, it won't have been a bad decision. They'll be able to continue to benefit from that business decision. So we'll see stuff like that, I think, more of that kind of thing. Integration company. Like I said, Swatch ain't going to spin anybody off anytime soon now, but you might see some companies get bought up, get integrated to adopt, depending on how long the tariffs last. Right? Pyromaniac Shrub. A lot of watch brands I have interest in come from Japan, not looking for the extra upcharge. Well, at least it's less than the Swiss. And Seiko's makes some great pieces. Citizen makes some great pieces. Citizen owns Bulova. There are a lot of really great watch companies out of Asia. And again, I think this will cause people to start looking at alternatives to the Swiss, for good or ill. And In one sense, it'll make it a healthier marketplace, and in other senses, it won't. Gian, I'll stick with brand new watches, Alex. Okay. Well, nothing wrong with buying new and buying used. Some of the pieces I own, I bought new. Some of the pieces I own, I bought used. I frankly can't afford to buy this one new. I barely could afford to buy it used. You got to just have to be a good shopper. Kevin, hey Kevin, good afternoon from Lakeland, Florida. Good evening from Wiesbaden, Germany. Sam's dad's mustache wax. Hey, hey, why do I think skeleton watches are not more popular? Because that's that is a taste thing in my humble opinion, because some people like a clean face. Some people like a busy face. Some people like a military face. Um, some people say that my Globemaster's face is too plain. Some people love it because the face is clean, right? I don't have currently any skeletons, but I do have an open heart. I've got my El Primero Chronomaster open heart. And there are people who fall on both sides of that. I have friends who say, wow, I love that. And I have friends who go, nah, I wouldn't get it. But they do sell this in a closed face. And they also sell it in a skeleton. So I think skeletons are like a taste thing. Some people like skeletons. I have no aversion to skeletons. I currently, like I said, I currently don't have any, but I've owned several, and I currently have an open heart. I think it depends on the watch too. Some watches have really, really cool skeletons, and some don't. The Asia Locker, that Chinese tourbillon I had, that was a cool looking skeleton. Um, Pyromaniac Shrub. What watch was that on my wrist? The dial was beautiful. Yes, it is. Um, it's the first generation Jaeger-LeCoultre Polaris Chrono. I really, 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 really like this watch. I used to have the three-hander, and I sold it because it wasn't quite what I wanted. And this is everything I wanted. And it's thinner than the Daytona. Great, great chrono. And it's a column wheel vertical clutch chrono. Just a really nice piece. I'm very happy with it. And it has micro adjust in a double deployment clasp, which is almost unheard of. I really like this piece. I'm actually living a little tight this month because I exceeded my watch budget. But I thought, what the heck? Because it presented itself to me, and I bought it. That happens sometimes. What are you going to do? And I'm glad I did it. But then again, I live here in Germany, so I'm not impacted by the American tariffs on watches. But now, if I were flying to the States, I'd wear something cheap just to make sure nobody accuses me of anything. I'll wear the Hamilton. Actually, I'll be in Philadelphia for the energy conversion conference from the IEEE. Because some of you may know I know some of you know, but some of you don't. I'm editor in chief of the IEEE's Power Electronics magazine. So I'll be in um, Philadelphia for the energy conversion conference. That'll be fun. ECCE. Always like talking tech. Uh, Julius Caesar talking about the tariffs, right? Dr. Bob's Nightmare. Seiko even makes all of their own lubricants. They even make their quartz crystals. They even make their own crystals. Seiko Epson makes crystals. They've got divisions that do everything. I think they even make their own batteries, or they have divisions that make, but it's all owned by, Seiko Epson, humongous corporation. It's like Hitachi. At one point, you could buy a stereo system or a steamship from them. The only American company like that anymore, and they're no longer like that, but they used to be really like that, and they're still kind of like that, is GE. Makes everything, from toasters to, or I don't know if they make toasters anymore, but they used to make consumer products. And I think they still make some white goods all the way up to spacecraft. GE, another great vertical corporation in that sense. Of course, they weren't completely vertical in manufacturing, but they covered all kinds of fields. Actually, horizontal. They were one of the great horizontal companies, and Seiko's a horizontal company that enables them to be vertical manufacturing, right? Because Those quartz crystals aren't just used in watches; they're used in a lot of electronics. Those batteries aren't just used in watches; they're used in a lot of electronics. Whatever microcircuits that they're using in those watches are in the quartz watches are also used in other areas of the industry. So, because Seiko Epson is such a large horizontally organized company as manufacturing wise, it allows them to be vertical in the manufacture of watches. So everything in that watch can be made by the same company. Like Rolex, they have their own jewelers, they have their own smelting for steel and gold. Um, Rolex is completely vertically integrated as far as watch manufacturing goes, which is one of the reasons, even though they're more of a premium watch dressed up as a luxury watch, they command and respect the prices they get because they are flawless pieces. They don't they're not as elegant as the JLC. But then again, the JLC retails for more than the Rolex. So, Rolex isn't trying to wear their britches too big. The retail, I mean, we always think about the expensive aspect of a Rolex based on what the gray market is charging because most people can't get it at retail. But a sub at retail is only like $11,000, only. But you know what I mean? When that very same watch, you just step outside of the store, you can sell it for a couple thousand over. I mean, those prices are softening, but you get what I mean. Um, Rolex can get away with it because they are so vertically integrated. In fact, Rolex is so vertically integrated that they might be able to eat a percentage of the tariffs. Not all of them, but a percentage, just like Nomos is going to eat all of them. But 39 is a big jump, a big jump. That's why it's all uncertain times. Um, Damon, hi, Damon. The Vince, maybe we could see an increase in American watchmaking. It'd be cool to see an American mechanical movement. It would. That's what I'm saying. Shinola, now's the time for a company like Shinola to strike while the iron is hot. A modest movement factory making, movement Solita stopped making, old, out of patent Swiss movements. Like the Venus, they could literally make the 1963 Seagull horizontal clutch column wheel hand wound chrono because that movement is out of patent. There are a lot of movements that are out of patent that Shinola could set up. They wouldn't even have to set up heavy duty manufacturing because a modern CNC machine and a lot of micro brands that are manufacturing their own movements are using this technology. You can set up a CNC machine and you can make those parts and get some people to assemble those parts. You would have to increase your workforce to a degree, which would be good for the American. I mean, in one sense, having a company like Shinola expand its operations would do exactly what some people are saying the tariffs were going to do, and that's the closest I'm going to get to politics on that. But to see Shinola or a company like Shinola, there are other companies. There are some American companies that actually make their own movements. Maybe they should scale up, you know. But now is an opportunity for those. I mean, now put up or shut up. Now, if these American companies, they should step up now and start making interesting pieces. And a company like Shinola already has a fan base. So if they start manufacturing more high-end watches, more mechanical-oriented pieces, more pieces that have a little bit more of a cachet to them, more interesting stories, some complications, I think they have an opportunity to do something. I do. I agree with you there. Oh, skeletons tend to have very thin wrists. Hey, Miranda. Johnny, will the tariffs increase touch subcomponents, movements, etc.? Well, they'll definitely touch movements because movements are a finished product, right? Um, I don't. Well, actually, nobody's taking the parts. I mean, there are companies like Shinola buying movements from outside of the country and manufacture and assembling the watches in the United States. But like, for example, hairspring companies or synthetic ruby companies or companies of that nature, companies that make hands, because there are some companies that make a lot of stuff in their movements, but they still buy their hands or they buy their hairsprings. But you're not seeing that in the United States, really. Maybe hands, but any part that's being imported, the tariffs are going to apply to them too, whether it's a hairspring or a hand or a base plate or whatever. Any product. coming in from Switzerland is going to have that tariff on it. So now would be a good time for companies that are, uh, like I said, now's a great time for Nomos to announce that they're going to eat the tariffs because that means that their watches will be the same price that they've been. And these are great watches, and it might entice people to consider them. And I think that's a smart thing because Nomos is, I said this earlier and I showed this earlier, but some of you came in late. I mean, just look at that movement. Look at that beautiful in house Deutsche Uhrenwerk movement. So the tariff, there's no such thing. An ill wind blows somebody good. There's no such thing as a knife that only cuts in one direction. The tariffs are going to have a lot of losers, but they're going to have a few winners. And hopefully some of them will be American companies. Um, Miranda, good evening from 39%. Yeah, good evening from Germany. I'm really trying hard to go to Geneva Watch Days this year, but I don't think it's going to work out because it's right on the heels of the Birmingham Energy Conversion Show, Birmingham, England. I've been running around a lot lately. Julius, I tried on the JLC Polaris Chrono Ocean Gray. Ooh, nice dial. Oh, the new one. That's the new one. Yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Uh, a few weeks ago, super nice on the wrist. That is a really nice piece. But I would suggest getting it pre-owned because it retails for 16 and I was able to pick this up for 9. That's a chunk of money. Now, the thing about a watch like that is it's not going to go much more below that. So, they drop and they hit, like the Nicholas Rusek, retail for 10, drop to 5, but it's going to stay at 5 for the foreseeable future. But now with the tariffs, it could see an increase. As I was saying, some of these watches that collectors like, but the average person wasn't really looking at, they're going to start looking at those watches as the inventory on the more popular pieces go. And people are going to start saying, wow, who knew the Polaris was so nice? Or wow, Omega Globemaster, never heard of that one before. Or like I said, the DeVilles and the Cellinis are going to start coming out of the vaults and getting out onto the street because as the companies run out of inventory, they do have some Swiss watches on hand. They just may not be the ones that the people wanted in the first place, but it'll give people an incentive to explore those other watches. JDF Omega, hey, my friend. GE makes turbofan engines also, apart from washing machines. As I'm saying, they make all kinds of stuff. They used to make everything. And like I said, Hitachi used to make, Kyocera. You could name a lot. Actually, there's still a lot of Japanese companies that are still that kind of integrated, like Seiko. Not too many American companies anymore do that. But then a lot of American companies went fabless back in the 70s and 80s, 70s and 80s. The big fabless push, which is almost what started some of the issues with supply chain here, because as you went fabless, yeah, you can consolidate costs and have just management and design and the like, and have someone else like Flextronics make your stuff. But now in a tariff situation, if you're a diverse multinational, you have issues with your supply chain. GE was smart to spin off a couple of their subsidiaries. Depends on how you look at it, because like I've dealt with some companies that were GE spin-offs, and they're flourishing companies, successful on their own. But there's a plus and a minus to being a humongous integrated organization and being a group of diverse smaller companies. This allows you to make big picture decisions, but you're slow as hell. This allows you to be more flexible, but you don't have as wide of a parallax. Your view is narrowed because you can only do a few certain things. It's a juggling act. Johnny Shapiro, U.S. manufacturer, does a magnificent handmade watch from New York. Yeah, they're one of the people I was talking about. There are companies doing, a lot of them are small lot, not making making maybe 50, 100 watches a year. Now's a great opportunity for them to ramp up manufacturing. And if you're making 100, 500 watches a year and you manage to go to 1,000, hey, you're going to increase your business, and you're going to probably sell everything you make, depending on how nice the piece is. If it's got a good fan following, people may start turning to your piece instead of as an alternative to the pieces they can't get their hands on. You know, Julius Caesar is also saying Shapiro may be out of L.A., but still American manufacturer. Beautiful watches. Hey, Angelina, Whatnot Watch community. Well, that's what I love about this channel is I'm really trying to make it a place where we can have a discussion is not just where I'm talking at the camera, where I'm reading your comments, we're answering what you have to say, we're having a conversation. I don't want to just read a list of pre-selected questions and then say, okay, I'm done and walk. I'm going to be on for about another 15, 20 minutes. And in that period of time, anything that comes up in the crawl, I'm going to address one way or the other. Um, Julius and Johnny are chatting. It's always nice to see them chat. She's seeing our audience members chatting amongst themselves because we're all a big community. Donnie DeMarco. Hey. The tariffs are going to drive up the cost of servicing vintage timepieces. I don't think so, unless it's a watchmaker that if because a lot of watchmakers have an inventory of parts, but it depends on what they specialize in. Because if they specialize in it, like if it's really vintage, like an Accutron repair person, they sit on an inventory, and they may sell that inventory to other watchmakers. But because of the nature of the beast, the manufacturer doesn't even make the spare parts anymore. So you have to accumulate all the used, not used, but new old stock parts or whatever you can get your hands on to build up your parts inventory. Now, if you're the kind of watchmaker that orders parts, yeah, you're going to be screwed if it's a Swiss watch that needs a Swiss part that you have to order from Switzerland. But if it's a Swiss watch that needs a Swiss part that you have in your drawer, you may still pass that. I mean, that's the trouble is that you're also going to have opportunistic business people who have the inventory on hand, did not have to pay the tariff, but you don't know that. So they're going to charge you the tariff. You're going to see some of that too. So it's, like I said, it's going to be a very complicated situation. Black market, gray market, honest dealers, slightly dishonest dealers, very dishonest dealers. It's going to start, and it's going to be interesting. It really will be interesting to see where this all goes. Not interesting fun, but interesting from an educational point of view, business. Oh yeah, I wouldn't buy it at the AD unless I got a decent discount. Yeah, the JLC, I'm guessing. Got the ultra thin moon. Ooh, for over 20%. See, now that's a good deal. The ultra thin moon is a beautiful watch. It really is a beautiful watch. Um, would also look at secondary too. Exactly. Hey, Butters, Miranda, not just watches from Switzerland, precision weights, Metler Toledo, electronic components, toilet systems. Wow, exactly. Geberit. Oh yeah, Geberit's Swiss. Lifts, Schindler, and many other everyday items that are used worldwide. You're absolutely right, Miranda. But we're a watch show, so we're talking about the watches. But you're absolutely right about all the other products. Medical equipment. I mean, what do the Swiss specialize in? The Swiss specialize in, well, actually kind of the same areas Americans do: industrial, medical, military. And all those are going to, I mean, we don't buy a lot of Swiss military equipment, but that's not going to be an issue. But we do buy a lot of Swiss medical equipment, and we do buy some Swiss industrial equipment, And so fine manufacturing is going to be impacted by that. Uh, a lot of industries are going to be impacted. Toilets, housing, But then again, at least in the case of toilets, there are good, viable American plumbing companies, and actually good, viable medical companies, and good, viable watch companies. But you have to look. Oh, pyromaniac shrub. Listen to me to awe. Well, people have told me my voice is the best part of the show. Sometimes that's why I make sure I have at least a halfway decent microphone. I have a Rode condenser, but for some reason the USB adapter stopped working properly. So I had to get this Sennheiser, which Sennheiser is also not a bad mic company. I did buy some clip-on lavaliers, but for this kind of work, I still like a good wired mic. And as I said, since my voice is the best part of the show, I want to make sure you get all that good bass in there. Hey, Tap 1999, haven't seen you for a while. Europe and Asian posts have stopped shipping to US. eBay and Etsy would be hugely affected. Yeah, it it'll be interesting to see how, because in one sense, the tariffs are almost like a radioactive marker in medical research because we'll see the impact in the marketplace because they're so strong. So we'll get to see in real time how much the plumbing industry will be affected, how much the elevator industry will be affected, how much the medical industry. We're going to definitely see how much the watch industry is affected. And maybe it'll open people's eyes to various, and like I said, let's stick within the watches for now. It'll open people's eyes to alternatives. And in one way, that'll be a good thing. So, like I said, it's an ill wind that blows nobody good. There are going to be a lot of losers from this, but there'll be a few winners. And with luck, some of us will be those winners, the consumer. Let's hope. Or as the Germans say, drück die Daumen, press your thumbs instead of cross your fingers. Interesting the different things people do. Julius, GE got super bloated and stagnant as an org. Yeah, okay, I could see that part being, because you can make that argument with Seiko, but they didn't get bloated and stagnant, but they're humongous and they make all kinds of stuff. But I can see where you're saying that you can get a little bit too big for your britches. Spinning off the healthcare and energy business helped GE parent to focus on their core biz while providing the spin-off complete focus. This is also true. Those are all legitimate points, and considering GE, you're probably right. But sometimes you get that spinoff and it doesn't work out. Like when um, Bell Labs spun off um, their, various things, divisions. Lucent didn't do very well. Avaya did, things like that. It's kind of hard to figure out when stuff like that happens, unfortunately. But yeah, I think you are right in the case of GE. I'll give you that one. Point for you. Donnie, thank you for answering about the tariffs affecting servicing. Well, like I said, oh, and thank you that you enjoy my stuff. Like I said, so if they're ordering parts from outside, they'll be impacted. But if it's a vintage piece and you're going to somebody who specializes in that model, they probably have an inventory of parts and you should be in good shape that way. Or if it's a part that they can source within the United States, that's going to be the issue, bringing it over the border. Johnny, geopolitics are everywhere. US bourbon are almost blocked in Canada. What about Swiss cheese and chocolate? Well, yes. But as I said at the beginning of the show, we're just going to talk about the tariffs and watches. Um, because I've always felt watches are a great hobby because under normal circumstances, there are no politics, there's no race, there's no religion. You could talk to an Arab and an Israeli about watches, and unless one's a Rolex fanatic, actually they'll both be Rolex fanatics. And you're going to have a good conversation. Watches are one of, because there are other hobbies of that nature, but watches are one of the pure hobbies that you know the JLC never hurt nobody. Now there are watches that have infamy. I mean, Hitler's famous JLC Reverso comes to mind, but the watch is not responsible for that. The manufacturers at the time, if you didn't do what he wanted, yeah, you weren't going to be able to help anybody in the grave. Um, so I mean, I can give companies like that a pass, but in today's world, most watches, or at least most premium watches, try to be as independent as possible from day-to-day stuff because it's bad for the business, and watches are like, that's one of the reasons I love being an electronics journalist, a technology journalist, is electrons don't have any politics. Transistors don't have any politics. Microcontrollers, all of that stuff, the laser beam has no politics. So I love that aspect of what I do, and I love that aspect about watches. So yes, there are going to be other ramifications, and they will be in all kinds of directions. And watches will be one of those areas, and it'll be very curious to see what happens. Miranda, audio's top notch. I know sometimes it's weird. I think it has more to do with the connection sometimes, because now that I have a decent mic, so let's keep our fingers crossed that it continues. Thanks. Um, Malad. Hey, Malad. By the way, I was trying to book the new Tudor Black Bay 58 Blue. Ooh, that's a nice watch. As it's the case of waiting list, it came to my mind what would happen if the industries like pharmaceuticals follow the fashion brands. Let's not think of too depressing stuff. Well, and make us be waiting in lists for medication. Yeah, but let's not think of too depressing stuff. Julia Seaver. Yes, it's true. Not all spin-offs are successful. Well, it's true. So now let's talk about the personal collector for a minute, because we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I did want to talk a little bit about the personal collector because there are there are going to be people, and I'm not advocating this behavior. I'm just saying they're going to people do. You're going to see. I think you're going to start seeing empty watch boxes in hotel rooms in Germany and Switzerland as people who are on their skiing vacation uh, buy the watch. Fly there without a watch just to be safe, buy a watch there, leave the box in the hotel room, strap the watch to their wrist, mail themselves the papers, and go through customs and say, I've owned this watch for years. I mean, as a collector, we don't have to worry about supply chain and putting 100 watches in a shop. We just have to worry about the one on our wrist. So you're gonna, and I know people who've done that for in current times just to avoid sales tax and stuff like that. So you're gonna see people go because if you think about it, for some of these watches, the tariff increase is less than the cost of a flight to go there, have a day, or have a weekend in Switzerland, enjoy some coffee and chocolates on site, buy a Swiss watch, leave the box in the hotel room, and wear it on your wrist back to the United States. That's a viable scenario on a one-off basis. Um, you could see, you might even see someone doing it, with like what do they call? I forget what they called the drug smugglers who swallowed the condoms with the cocaine. It might even behoove you to take like five homeless people, fly them to Switzerland with you, have them each strap on a watch and fly them back, so you have five watches to sell. If the tariffs go on, you don't know where it's going to go. But as far as the individual, there are things the individual can do. Like I said, you can shop for vintage, or you can take the money that you saved and uh, attempt some shenanigans, which I do not advocate at all. But you're going to see people do things because people don't like to be thwarted. And if you want something nice, you're going to try to get it. That's why my biggest warning is the black market. You're going to see the black market get ugly. You're going to see more watch thefts in the United States to fill this black market. You're going to see more counterfeits, more fakes enter the marketplace because of the pressure, you know? Um, and if you're buying a watch that you're thinking is gray market and you're getting away with the tariffs and then you find out it's fake, that's an expensive lesson. Malad, oh no, I said that already. Oh yeah, Gian. Malad, as a licensed nurse, it's never going to happen unless pharmaceuticals wanted to get sued to oblivion. It's going to be a worldwide scandal if they do that. Like I said, it'll get ugly. It'll get ugly quick. Mules. Yes, mules. Mules are what they call. So, I mean, if you found somebody to sell you, five Daytonas, new ones, and you at that point you could get a mule to, hey, fly to Switzerland. You might, let's say you're a rich person too busy. Well, if you're that rich, you can pay the tariffs. But maybe for that $3,000, $5,000, you'd send your cousin to go buy the watch and wear it back. People are going to start doing weird things to circumvent these tariffs, and some of them will be funny, and some of them will be not so funny, and it'll be very interesting to see where the market goes. RGM, that's another good American watch company. Even RGM will be impacted since most of the movements Swiss. Well, they do make some of their own pieces. I think they refinish some Swiss movements the way there were some German companies that buy Swiss move. Actually, there are companies in France that do that too. There are companies that buy the Swiss movements and then either they skeletonize them or they decorate them more or do things to them. But yeah, they'll be impacted too. So now would be the time to invest in a CNC machine, you know, not Swiss made. Oh, or buy it before Tariffs had started, but that you have to need a time machine now. This is a time machine, not that kind though. But yeah, now would be a good time for an American watchmaker to buy a CNC machine and start making their own movements, even if they're just simple three-handers or two-handers, even. You know, the old Unitas movement is in the public domain, and it's 17 joules, has a small seconds. Some American company could start banging those out. Why not? Malad, Gian, thank God for that. In case of watches, most of the times we're being overcharged and it's painful to pay high prices and then being treated like some watch brands do. Well, hopefully that again, there'll be some good things that come from the tariffs. Maybe the tariffs will put some, humility and modesty in the luxury watch industry. Good luck with that, but might happen. Gian, Malad, the watches don't have professional regulations, licenses, and laws. Health professionals do. This is true. Johnny, imagine Grubel Forsey. Yeah, very high-end German brand. Tariff will be crazy. No, Grubel Forsey is a German brand, so they'd only have the 10%. So Grubel, see that good reason to buy Grubel Forsey if you were originally going to buy a Daytona. And now you can buy the Grubel Forsey, which is a better watch. But I believe Grubel Forsey is German. I might be wrong, but I believe so. Or no, Grunenberg. There are a couple of the really high-end companies out of Germany, but I thought Grubel Forsey was a German. I might be wrong, but they could be Swiss. But yeah, it's gonna impact a lot of companies in a lot of interesting ways. It really will. Be very curious to see how it goes. So, hey, we're at the top of the hour. We're at a pause in the question, so I'm going to take it as an opportunity to bail because I got a lot to do tomorrow. Uh, Great evening, everybody. Have a fantastic week and have a lovely night.